A new age is upon us. The tides are shifting, the winds are blowing, and change is coming. Shadows will engulf us all, but is that a good thing for us and the future of Warhammer 3? Shadows of Change is scheduled to launch at the end of the month on August 31st at a more than hefty price point of $25 US. For this video, we're going to keep the focus on the crapload of content that is coming, and there is a lot on the way that I am very excited for, but understand that I have serious reservations about this new norm for Total War pricing that I will express in depth in another video very soon. $25 is, in my opinion, pretty ridiculous for a Lord pack, fun though it may be, and while it certainly does have more content than previous ones, I think the jump in price may not quite be commensurate with what we're looking at here. So we will discuss that at a later date, very soon in fact, but I of course would love to have you guys support me through my affiliate link if you'd like to pre-order anyway. Some of you are going to do that no matter what, but for now, there is no rush, and that is why I am not going to link that yet. The DLC doesn't drop for another 3 weeks, so while it is your money, and you can and should do with it as you wish, I really do recommend waiting until we have a chat and see some more of what's on offer in terms of gameplay and mechanics before you make a decision on whether you want to buy Shadows of Change or not. So, this is a new format for Total War Warhammer Lord packs. This time there are 3 Legendary Lords on the way, one for Tzeentch, one for Grand Cathay, and one for Kislev, including a host of new units, generic lords, legendary heroes, and unique campaign mechanics. I must apologize to Edgar von Horseman fans. Your eternal vigil must continue for now. It will instead be the Changeling, the perplexing prankster, weaving malign schemes for the Raven God as a demonic herald, while Yuan, the Jade Dragon, furthers the might of the Celestial Empire for Grand Cathay, and Mother Ostankya, the vengeful crone, Grandmommy Stanky Legs, unleashes her lessons from the deepest, darkest forests of Kislev's northern oblast. The shot of those incarnate elementals rising from the woods was probably the highlight of the trailer for me, and naturally, each will have their own sub-factions, start positions, and goals separate from the Ursun storyline in Realms of Chaos, but even after watching the trailer, it's not entirely clear how the narrative will bind all 3 together, or if it will even attempt to do so. What is clear is that the Changeling, as befitting its reputation, is doing an incredible job of driving conflict between Order races, sowing discord between the various sub-factions of Cathay and Kislev. We see that multiple times throughout the trailer as he shapeshifts into Ice Witches and Onyx Crowmen forms, feeding misinformation and acting as an imposter that leads to the burning of a Kislev city as incarnate elementals from the Wind of Gur rampage throughout. Incredible model on them, channeling amber magic and unleashing the bestial rage of their patron Wind, and then later, the Changeling pretends to be an Onyx Crowman, spies and creatures of magic employed by the Jade Dragon, who uses them as scouts and assassins to root out sorcery and keep the peeps in order. So the big thing to know about the Changeling is that it can take any form and almost perfectly replicate their idiosyncrasies, whatever they may be, which means from Miao Ying to Greater Demons, Scarbrand, Kairos, you name it, silver spoons, or piece of dog poop lying on the sidewalk, he can take that form and mimic it to the max, which naturally opens up some interesting potential in Total War form. Think of the Changeling as an annoying YouTube creator that only does practical jokes. A hellish gremlin that would burn your house down, kill your dog, and then when you get mad about it, would call you a snowflake and say it's just a prank, bro. He's a demon, so he's a bit of a psychopath, naturally, doesn't abide by any set of earthly moral standards or philosophizing, and his mischief extends into the realms of chaos as well, where his feats are rather legendary. He has quite literally whoopee-cushioned corn, snipped locks of hair from the Dark Prince's sleeping head, and crafted war between the other Chaos Gods so that Tzeentch could benefit from the chaos. In particular, he loves trolling Khorne because the Blood God is a rage monster. There are very few creatures in the cosmos that would suffer a more brutal end than if the Slayer of Souls ever managed to get his hands on him. And in campaign, the Changeling's world will apparently be divided into theaters of war, where particular regions will contain major and minor schemes. By constructing buildings, stealing identities, and instigating tensions amongst otherwise civilized populations, these completed schemes will culminate in a grand event and epic battle for supremacy in each theater of war, rife with bountiful rewards along the way. With enough grand schemes carried out, the Changeling's final purpose will be within reach as he conducts this ultimate scheme for campaign victory. Potential downside to some pretty cool sounding mechanics there, at least on the battle side, is that certain forms are inherently much better than others, right? So I'll be interested to see if Creative Assembly have thought up some reasons to change forms frequently and not just stick with whoever has the best base stats. Like, Will he be able to take the form of Karl Franz and Deathclaw, or Alarielle and her Great Eagle? Or will he be forced to just run around on foot as those characters? Because if you can't use mounts, and you can't use items, that will pretty much immediately cut out a really large chunk of the cast, and only the hyper strong lords that are strong in their base form, namely the greater demons, will truly be on the table for characters you want to shift into. You might want to be Kolek Suneater, you might want to be Skarbrand, but why would you want to be Alarielle if you can't use her Star of Avalorn or her Great Eagle? She doesn't offer much in that case. And while shapeshifting into greater demons is certainly fun, you're already playing Chaos. If I want to play Skarbrand or Kairos, then I'll play those factions for Khorne or Tzeentch. I'm not going to play the Changeling for that experience. It's just kind of boring. So I'd really like to see some real reasons to shift into other characters, whether that be including mounts or otherwise. I think that kind of thing could be beneficial for the game. But of course, it's not all about the Changeling. You'll be joined by some new heroes and units as well. The Blue Scribes will be the first of 2 legendary heroes for Tzeentch. Pair of scrappy little blue horrors on a disc, tasked with collecting every scrap of forbidden lore and spell in existence. They become more powerful as magic is cast around them, while their innate scrolls of sorcery grants a random selection of spells at the start of every battle. On top of that, every time they cast, those spells are shuffled and randomized once again, which sounds delightfully zany. Could make for some serious feast or famine when it comes to casting spells, and as you know, we love casting spells. And Zongors are making their long-awaited debut as well, though I'm a bit disappointed in their appearance. I don't think they look bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I was certainly hoping for the modern and updated models in both 40k and Age of Sigmar, with the Arcane Kopeshes, the Skyfires, the Discs of Tzeentch. I think those are more interesting visually and from the gameplay side than another infantry unit with barrier that gets more weapon strength when magic is being cast. I'm still happy they're in, but I would have liked to see CA push that envelope on the visuals a little bit further, make them a little bit more unique than blue gore with a headdress and basically the same kind of weaponry that we've been seeing for them the whole time. On the other hand, the Cockatrice and Mutalith Vortex Beast look absolutely amazing. The Cockatrice is a flying, terror-causing monster similar to a Manticore that can vomit acid and poison enemies while slowing them with its petrifying gaze and ripping apart a backline in melee. I would not expect it to be heavily durable or really even particularly game-changing for Tzeentch, but as support for a cav fight, an aerial duel, or for pressuring enemy range troops, it should perform that role quite well. And the creme de la creme of the DLC, at least on the Tzeentch side, is definitely the Mutalith Vortex Beast, a tentacled hentai monster with a ball of raw magic anchored to its back. Dealing damage passively like a Mortis engine with its aura of mutation, it also grants boons to friendlies, increasing their melee power, and detonating enemies with the Tide of Transformation, a matter explosion that disorients and deals severe knockback damage to give it space to escape if it's being overwhelmed. This is a centerpiece monster that could potentially define the meta for Tzeentch. We've seen how powerful Mortis engines are in the past, on top of a relatively fast, very tanky single-entity monster that causes terror and deals damage and causes disruption in other ways. There's a good chance it'll see a ton of play in competitive multiplayer and in campaign, and it makes quite the impression in the trailer as well. We'll have to do a deeper dive once we know what its stats are, but at least on paper, it sounds like a serious game changer. And joining all of that is, of course, Aekold Helbrass, now confirmed as the free LC character, wielding a greatsword that begets the Breath of Life, a healing aura for all nearby units, that I also expect to shake up the meta for Tzeentch and may allow for some rather disgusting combinations alongside Village the Curseling, stacking barrier replenishment and healing in these kinda elite blob death balls that might be exceptionally difficult to deal with. Perhaps reminiscent of Gotrek, Felix, and Thorek, those kinds of foot goon squads rolling together, conferring healing, and doing all kinds of things in duels and in supporting the rest of your army. So Tzeentch is getting a lot of love in this update, which is to be expected in a DLC called Shadows of Change, but interesting that they got 2 legendary heroes alongside their lord, while Cathay got none. May imply that Cathay won't have too long to wait before another DLC comes their way, perhaps in the form of Li Dao and the Monkey King, but of course at the average rate of 4 to 5 months between launches, with Thrones of Decay and then a Slaanesh DLC lined up after that sometime early next year, it will still likely be another 8 or 9 months at least before Cathay has a chance to be in one, and that's only if Cathay's in that one too. If they're not in the Slaanesh DLC, could be 12 months, 15, 16, year and a half, 2 years, who the hell knows. But before we get to the Kingdom of the Dragon, let's talk about Kislev first, because this is the element of the update that is most surprising, and certainly the most, well, elemental. I did expect Mother Ostankya the Crone to be the representative for Kislev, but the units and playstyle were very much up in the air, even if we knew her name. And this will be a radically different approach to warfare and empire building for the Daughters of the Forest than it was for Katerin or Kastaltin. A vengeful crone who dwells in the ancient oblasts of Kislev, the Old Mother may appear frail, but this facade conceals a being of terrifying arcane might who wants the nightmares of Kislevite children and harnesses nature's wrath to create potent hexes and incantations. She is a dark and fearsome guardian, not quite evil, not quite good, but faithful to the land, holding anyone who seeks to harm it accountable, which means she has zero qualms about dealing death to Kislevite peasantry or nobility who threaten them, accident or no. And as we saw in the trailer, when her land is threatened, she is willing to butcher an entire town just because she thought an Ice Witch was profaning one of her natural relics. Apparently, her mount is an automatic component of her person, meaning she cannot be separated from it in-game. She will not walk around on two spindly old legs. It's always going to be that Chariot Cauldron combo that rains spirits upon her adversaries from afar, while sprouting the legs of a spider in melee as an artillery chariot hybrid. So it sounds like she'll blend the firepower of DJ Katat's Roomba of Doom with a fast, hard-hitting chariot pulled by the Things in the Woods, which are fast-moving infantry killers, sound like the Kislev counterpart to Fleshhound, Sabertusk, or War Lions. This is a new unit. This is new lore. I do not believe these are ever referenced, and if they are, it's only a passing one. They're never described in any army book that I can remember. Any kind of deep lore, I don't think they've existed before. So this is a new thing for Total War, kind of similar to the things we've seen for Cathay. Straight up new lore here, very interesting. Basically a higher tier, more devastating flanker unit than your typical Direwolf or Chaos Warhound. So certainly falls into the Total War archetypes that we know, but new kind of visuals, new kinds of lore, a fresh take on Slavic forest spirits rising from the woods to defend the land. And this will all be bound together by the witchcraft of her hut, where ingredients gathered during your playthrough combine with spirit essence to create powerful incantations and various hexes, forcing enemy armies from your lands instantly, immediately purging all corruption, massive unit buffs, all culminating in the search for the Malediction of Ruin, her final hex to ensure the security and sanctity of the motherland itself. I think the big question for her, though, at least the one that I've been asking myself, is how much of Kislev's roster will she actually utilize, right? Because there's something very strange about seeing spider hatchlings and incarnate elementals running into battle alongside regimented ranks of Gospodar infantry. From the vibes in the trailer, I don't really get the sense that the regular rank and file of Kislev will be entirely available to her, because she feels a lot like Drycha, to the point where wielding Zargard and elite noble bear cavalry, winged Hussars, that kind of thing, really maybe doesn't make that much sense for her. So I'm not sure exactly how they will handle that, but a wild army of feral creatures definitely seems to fit her more than the armies of Kislev's Boyar sons. So there may be a blend, a mix of the two, but at least from the trailer, it looks like we're getting a lot more on the wild side and not so much the regimented troops. I'm also sad to report there is no indication of her chicken-legged hut, which confirms she will be chariot-bound, and there shall be no stomping of Chaos Warriors into giblets under the dinosaur feet of Colonel Sanders and his spicy chicken bucket. Sad day indeed to learn that glorious mount will not be an option, but she is being bolstered by some cool stuff regardless. The Hag Witches, hero casters on sleds pulled by stags. The Things in the Woods, bear doggos made of bone and malice that we just discussed. The Akshino Rangers, bearskin-clad skirmishers who can stalk, vanguard, and potentially snipe, serving as higher-tier foot bowmen in a similar manner to Deepwood Scouts. And the Elemental Incarnate of Beasts, another headlining monster reminiscent of a Gorgon, channeling its raw, natural ferocity alongside the Wind of Gur. The animations it has are incredible in this trailer. You can see kind of open its chest and just fire a maelstrom of beast energy at things, and I assume can eat whatever it gets its hands on, rip things apart in melee. Huge weapon strength, huge MA. That's what I would expect from a monster that big and ferocious, and probably the coolest looking unit in the entire DLC. Certainly never expected to see it for Kislev of all factions though, and it will be very interesting to incorporate into armies of regimented soldiers and gunpowder. This was always inevitable, the combining of more the land units, the spirits and Leshen and Slavic folklore horror, with the normal men and women of Kislev, but it definitely is a weird vibe here that will take a bit to get used to, I think. Pretty cool. And finally, we have the armies of Grand Cathay, led by Yuan, the Jade Dragon, who has already become my favorite of the three. I had initially been under the impression that he'd be less of a fighter than his brothers and sisters, more of a strategist and diplomat, maybe a bit more of a nerd than Storm or Iron, but honestly, the dude seems kind of OP, like he doesn't really have any weaknesses at all. Which is ironically what a lot of people said about Cathay when they were first announced. I never really agreed with that assessment. I always felt like people were kind of jumping the gun with that. Let them flesh out the lore more, let us learn more about the country and its people before we jump down that rabbit hole. But where Zhao Ming was going insane because of the Warp Stone, and Miao Ying is stretched thin defending the Great Bastion, Yuan Bo is poised to rule over the central provinces in a fairly safe and strong location, and the descriptions make him sound like he's fantastic at just about everything you could possibly want in a Total War game. He wields the seal of the Dragon Emperor himself, and is his main executioner, the only dragon sibling thus far with a blade and unique items. He's a master of sorcery and statecraft, economics, diplomacy, and military might. As a ferocious combatant in melee, he can turn into a goddamn dragon. I mean, what do you expect? Incredible animation sets, a fantastic model, and some unique mechanics as well. He can empower the Wuxing Compass to strengthen different regions of Cathay against the tides of war. He also wields his deep-running influence in matters of state to rush construction in a single turn, a la the Chaos Dwarfs, sow diplomatic discord to move armies through enemy territory unimpeded, or crack down on corruption to nip unrest in the bud, embracing disharmony and creating opportunity. Whatever the hell that means. So, his sub-faction is the Court of Celestial Sorcerers. He is the chief spy master of the Empire, using a vast network of Onyx Crowmen, and he will apparently begin his campaign in the capital city of Wei Jin, at least in Realms of Chaos. He seems to wield 2 spells from 3 separate lores of magic, Light, Yin, and Heavens, of which we can infer he will at least have Comet of Cassandora and Missile Mirror, based on his short story and nickname, and his Executioner's Blade will make him a potent duelist, although we don't know specifically how that will come into play yet. What we do know is that with a Matters of State mechanic, he can enact powerful overt and covert policies across settlements, armies, and characters to best suit your empire's needs, utilizing diplomacy and policy in a deeper way than those who have come before. Probably fair to surmise the Confederation and diplomatic bonuses will be tied into that role he has as the main administrator and conciliator of Cathay. And yeah, like I said, seems real good at just about every element you could possibly want in a grand strategy game. In battle, he'll be joined by the Onyx Crowmen, winged servants of his mother, the Moon Empress, forged from Ulgu, the Wind of Shadow, as beings of magic not entirely unlike demons, likely a higher tier version of Harpies that can harry and harass a back line and run down archers, apparently excelling in melee combat, so expect a kind of veteran price point, $850, $900, $1,000. Can't quite tell how elite they will be. When I look at them, I don't really think elite, so I'm thinking more like a mid-tier type of unit. You don't really want small flyers in large numbers that are super expensive, because they're just going to get wrecked in auto-resolve, so it might be just like I said, higher tier Harpy, that kind of thing, but maybe kind of crazy if they decide to go like, hey, this is a 1100 or 1200 gold unit that can compete with Longbow Riders, but is more used for the backline harassing type of role. I don't know how they're going to handle that, but definitely seems like a cool, useful addition to the roster. And the Celestial General, a new lore level character who wields a massive hammer. Not really sure what role he will play in the Cathayan roster, if he's even really all that needed. I think it'll depend on his mounts. There are some potentially interesting mount options coming up on the unit roster here in a second that we'll discuss. The Zhengku War Drum is in as well. You can see it in the trailer, but for some reason it's not listed in the documents given to us before announced, so I don't really have any details on it. It will certainly provide support auras and not be a combatant, but other than that, not quite sure what specifically it will do besides buffing your own army and helping with harmony. And we are indeed getting Temple Guardian Lions, although perhaps not in the way that was expected. I was thinking they would come in the form of elite armored fleshhounds, maybe slower but heavier and more damaging, or as monstrous cavalry, as mounts for elite Cathayan knights, like an Iron Pagoda veteran heavy cav unit, except on monstrous mounts, but instead they're going to be single entity monsters, arriving in 2 separate flavors. The Jade Lion in green will recharge your Winds of Magic, focused on attacking with flaming and magical damage, while the Jet Lion in black is an anti-magic unit, causing enemy mages to miscast and passively reflect spells and missiles back towards their attackers. More of a tanky and survivable bastion in melee. I do not know if they are going to be mounts for the Celestial General. I hope they will be. I think that would be a really nice addition for him. Maybe give you a reason to use that Lord. But unless he gets an absolutely bomb-ass skill tree or some cool mounts, I'm not really sure why you'd want him as a Lord. The Caster Lords are almost always going to be better, or you're just going to be using the Dragons. Cathay just kind of has a design problem with their Lord options where a lot of them are trash, so hopefully there's some rebalancing of the balloon riding nerds, and we're given a reason to pick Lords other than Shugengen. So as usual, the animation team, the art team, the trailer, the vibes, all of it is immaculate. The centerpiece units coming with this update look incredible. The Lords seem fun and varied. Some great work has been put into this DLC, of that I have no doubt. We're taking a closer look at each of these new campaign mechanics as information rolls out, and we will not have long to wait for the Changeling on that front, I do believe. DLC in general seems like a flavorful and fun addition to the game, as these DLCs usually are. This new format of 3 Lords and 3 factions getting updates together is good in a lot of ways, but does it have enough content in it to justify the massive increase in price to $25 US? Will patches and bug fixing and support for this game start getting better with this significantly higher price point? I think that still remains to be seen, and right now, that is by far my biggest concern. The value proposition for a Lord pack compared to Chaos Dwarfs being the exact same price, and that's something we'll be discussing much more in depth in the coming days. But stay tuned, there is a lot to cover and a bunch of gameplay reveals on the way, so join me on this journey through Shadows of Change as we march towards August 31st. Hope to see you all there, and let me know what you thought of the trailer and reveal in the comment section below. I will see you all in the next video. Lady Pride, signing out for now. Have a good one, guys.